everyone just grab a seat, grab your drink, grab your food. We're going to start right now, and I'd like to introduce Khyber Oser. So if you venture past events, you might remember that Ron Oser was here before, and this is his son Khyber. Ron is a hobby legend. He's been doing his entire life, and he's following his footsteps of his father. Khyber's been doing this since the early 2000s. Started working at Mastronet auctions back in the day. He co-wrote along with Henry Yee in the back, if you guys remember from photos last time. This book here, a portrait of baseball photography. Fast forward, Khyber is now the head of the director of vintage memorabilia and photography at Golden Auctions. So welcome, Khyber, and thanks for being here, bud.
Hi everybody. I want to say first that I'm really honored to share the stage with Jimmy Spence, a legend, and with Kevin and Andrew. And I love what Chris and Chris are doing with BC Vintage. I'm glad there's a luxury brand that's different from what the auction companies do and has fixed price sales. And I love working with these guys.
Thank you so much, Khyber. Appreciate you coming out. So Khyber has a little bit of an interesting background because he's a writer by trade. Let me fix this microphone. Slide over this way, maybe. So Khyber's a writer by trade, and he's really introduced a lot of creative writing into and you can expand upon this, but talk about how you did it back at Mastronet, and I know you have some great stories, if you could share something like that.
I am like the least likely person who would be sitting in this chair right now. Except that it's in my blood. Because of my dad, like Ryan Spence and like Chris, I'm second generation hobby, and I grew up going to all the shows in the 80s. So I was crawling around at my dad's baseball card stores and learned everything I know there. So I went to school, I studied English at Penn State, and when I got out of school, I was thinking about being a lawyer or going into politics or something. And I ended up seeing what my dad was doing and saying maybe I could use my English degree there. This was 2002. So what's interesting about that time is there were writers in the hobby at the auction companies, but they mostly were hobby guys that didn't necessarily have an English background. So I came in having an English background and I knew some stuff about the hobby and I could learn. So I kind of was like bringing two different skills together. And I learned at the foot of Bill Mastro, who no matter what people might think of Bill, he really was an artist and had a vision, and he would say to me, "Khybe, make me cry." You know, he would read every single write-up, and he wanted us to value the pieces and treat them like with veneration, you know, treat them with respect. And so I was just a young gun for hire. I was a writer, I was not a consignment director or anything, and Henry Yee and Marshall Fogel knew everything about photos, and they were looking for a writer to help them write their book. So I mean, I guess I could have kind of ghost written it, but they put me on the byline for it. So it's Henry, Marshall, and my book, A Portrait of Baseball Photography, and this is the book that created the type system. So this was in 2005, and I had no idea this was going to follow me for the rest of my life. I did love photos before that. It was just coincidence. I really was a writer, and they were the guys who knew everything. But now I have the muscle memory now too, and I've learned from Henry, I've learned from Marshall, and I learned a lot along the way. So I was at Mastro, then I was at Legendary, I was at Huggins and Scott for a long time. I used to freelance at Golden, then I recently came back to Golden to build a photo division. And I've done that, and I love working on photos. I write everything. My background is as a writer. I'm no wheeler dealer sales guy, even though I am a consignment director at Golden. But my passion is the writing. So basically, I'm like a consignment director by day, and then I do all my writing late at night. Like when Henry's authenticating all his photos, I'm busy writing. And I just get really passionate about the research. I'm not really like a flowery type writer, but if you give me some information, I can dig and find like what Jordan shoes is he wearing, and what game did he wear that wristband, and you know, that's the kind of stuff that I really get off on.
So, just real quick, we have to thank you because everybody in here has tried to purchase something online, and you want to find out more about the item, and you go to the write-up, and there's nothing there. And that always frustrated me. And then, when we met many years ago, you just start seeing, oh no, you can add more to just the visual. Like, this isn't just a Michael Jordan original photo. This isn't just a Babe Ruth signed baseball. There's so much more that goes into it, and those write-ups really do help all of us so much when we're trying to figure out what we're buying, how much we should be paying for it. So on behalf of all the buyers in here, thank you for adding the written word to go along with the rare collectible.
There is an art to it. I don't want to tell you everything you already know about Babe Ruth. I just want to tell you what happened in that game that's pictured that day. And get really granular, not the big like fluff. I'm not about the fluff. I want to give some real factual research.
Yeah, and I think that's what everyone here appreciates, because we're all passionate collectors, and when we can learn more about something, and it's a story, and it's not a sales.
And I can slip inside those shoes. I just don't, for whatever reason, like myself, I don't need to own those things myself, but I love connecting people. That's really what I'm passionate about more than anything, is just bringing like this buyer and this seller together and finding like almost like a matchmaker, I guess. Oh, and so I did photos over the past 2 years at Goldman, but then I saw this opening where graded magazines are really interesting to me. And the photographers that photo guys care about are the same photographers that magazine guys care about that were shooting for Sports Illustrated. It's a different world because photos are more like fine art. There's no grading, and there's no pop report. Magazines are a completely different animal. Like some graded, magazine collectors like really appreciate that. They want the facts and statistics and the values. Sometimes you don't know exactly how much a photo is going to be worth until it goes to market. But I have kind of brought these two worlds together at Golden. I run those two categories. I do all the writing in those two categories. And I'm really excited about the magazines. CGC is doing magazines. I was talking to Ryan about the authentication of signatures on magazines. And I'm just looking, so what I really came to talk about today, am I going on too much?
Continue.
What I really came to talk about today is people know about Type 1 photos, and people know about card-used photos. The most expensive photos are card-used photos. The 51 Bowman Mantle is worth about $1 million. The 52 Topps Mantle photo is, probably could be like $5 million if it's in really nice condition. There's only a few. Henry is like the walking pop report. He knows how many photos there are. And what's interesting is there's so much more to photos than cards, because photos were used for magazines, which is part of the connection that I like, and for my show and tell, that's what I brought. But for posters, for premiums, for postcards, there are so many different ways to find. You can find them inside programs. You might find a portrait. There's so many ways to find a photo that has a secondary usage that makes it that much more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. We love photos for that reason. Card images are, unless you're ready to spend hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars like you're saying, a lot of them are unattainable now. So finding iconic moments of iconic people, a lot of times that's from magazines like you're saying.
Yeah, we had a Babe Ruth photo over the summer at the National, and it had been used, Henry might remember it had been used for buttons and so many. It was a Ruth photo. Remember, it had been used for pinbacks and all kinds of different usages. And, the underwear box and all kinds of marketing. Especially Babe Ruth was widely used. Were you going to add anything?
No, I was just going to say it was a Conlon photo.
And it was a Conlon photo. I just love the photographers too. There's so many interesting stories with all the master photographers.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who are in here right now that are shocked that just a photograph. I'm really calling out my friends because they always laugh at me when I say that a photograph could be worth 6 figures, 7 figures. They just think what I do is insane. But it's true, and the pops are low. It's like a card, so there's the crossover there. But as you said, and as we'll get into the crossover into different things, the magazines, the posters is an emerging market. We're new in the game, but it's coming.
I think the hobby is all about stories. I think some of the most famous cards have stories behind them, like the Wagner or the Lajoie. And photos are a great place to tell stories. I think there's really interesting scenes, and that's why it feels like fine art to me.
Absolutely, and on top of that, they're super rare and unique. Each one, there might only just be a handful, sometimes one of one.
Yeah, so without further ado, we've been talking about crossover pieces and different items, so I know you brought some awesome stuff for us here today.
I did. But if you look later, I'll just tell you, I did bring 2 show and tells here. This is the book, A Portrait of Baseball Photography, but this is the copy that's signed by Henry, from 2005, my personal copy, signed by Henry, signed by Marshall, signed by Bill and Jeff, who designed it, and my dad. And then after that, we did do a second book. My dad and I were involved in this book. Nobody knows about it, but it was with Mark Friedland, the collector, and we chose 100 cards and described them. And so you can check that out. It'll be on the table too.
We know about it now. And we're about to know about these awesome type photos.
Oh, do you want to grab those?
We got them right
Okay,
there.
great.
So yeah, Khyber brought some original Type 1 photos for you guys. These are rare photographs, and as opposed to being paired up or the images that were used on famous cards, they were used elsewhere, and let's get into it, Khyber.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how few Sports Illustrated covers there are out there in photo form, at least in Type 1. We just had a Type 3 of the Dream Team cover sell for, I think it was $2,000 for a Type 3. That's pretty impressive. So Type 3 meaning that it was printed from a duplicate negative. It was from the era, but it wasn't printed from the original negative. And the Dream Team cover of Sports Illustrated, in 1992 with the rings. This is a John Havlicek cover, so it's not even like, one of the most popular names of Hall of Famers. But just the fact that it was used for that Sports Illustrated cover, if you wanted to collect the magazine and the photo, I just think it's the intersection of these two different categories. And one of them is very obsessed with condition, and one of them is more obsessed with storytelling and art, and they come together nicely.
Yeah, and like you said, there's photo collectors on one side of the room, magazine collectors on the other side of the room, and we're trying to bridge that gap. This is kind of timely. The Celtics, this is from a cover from 1969. I wasn't alive then, but I'm assuming the Celtics won that year. And they won last year, and are they favorites to win this year? Any Celtics fans out here? All right, now let's go Knicks, baby.
I'm not a seller myself, but I will tell you that all 3 of these items are currently at auction.
So they could be yours, guys.
Do you have like an approximate value here? Are we looking at something that's 6 figures, 5 figures, $100? What do we got roughly?
It's a maturing market, so it's very rare to see a Sports Illustrated cover, but I also think it's kind of like a little bit of a secret still. I don't think that this is going to sell for thousands. I think it might be 1,000, and then if people really understand its value, maybe it'll be somewhere in the 1,000 to 2,500 range. But we're not talking real big money. I think someday you might be looking at something very valuable, but I just don't think we're quite there yet.
Havlicek.
Havlicek. Like Havlicek stole the ball. All right, so now here's another example of it's kind of like a card, but non-card use. This is a photo of Mantle that was used for the M114 Premium, the baseball magazine Premium. It's shown here. So if you're a collector, if you're a card collector and you own the M114, you might want to own this photo too, because you'll be the only one who does. It's not something that, dozens of people are going to have the opportunity to have both. And it's Mantle, so how can you go wrong?
Yeah, it's Mantle, full uniform, swinging. That's vintage baseball.
I joked in my description that when you see a patchy field and outfield trees, you know it's spring training. And post-war spring training.
That's the writer in you, Khyber. You know all this stuff. And this is my favorite piece you brought, by far.
Yeah, so I had this conversation with my dad. I'll just give a shout out to him if he's watching. Maybe
Ronnie on the live stream, if you're watching, we love you, buddy.
Ronnie O. So we were having a conversation like 6 months ago where we said, what would be the best possible music photo? Because pop culture, is not as well known in Type 1 photos as sports. And this is what we came up with. I didn't know we'd eventually have it in the auction, but this is the image that we thought of. You wouldn't know who the photographer is, but you might know that it was the Monterey Pop Festival, and maybe you've seen the footage before of Jimi Hendrix burning his guitar on stage. What I learned in my research was that it was really a rivalry with Pete Townsend, that they were both trying to one-up each other to see who could be like the dominant guitarist, and You know, if you watch the footage, after he burns the guitar, then he starts flailing around the stage and banging it and breaking it. Then he throws it into the audience. But the fascinating story behind this is that this was not a famous photo. This was taken by a 17-year-old, just happened to be there. And then almost 20 years later, Jan Wenner at Rolling Stone put it on the cover of this Rolling Stone. It wasn't on the cover in the 60s. And he colorized it, Wenner did, at Rolling Stone. So that's like, it's a black and white photo. This is the original photo. And then it was colorized that way, and it just took off. It's been one of the most famous music images since 1987, but not since the 1960s. Nobody knew about it. So this has the stampings on the back. I'm not sure, maybe Henry would know how to pronounce the name, Ed Karev or Karayev. He's not a well-known photographer. He was a teenager when he took this picture. And I never thought we'd have the opportunity to have it at auction because I didn't know if there was one, let alone, one that would come our way.
I'd assume since this is the cover and they're doing the greatest performances live, Rolling Stone, I assume that was the #1 performance at that time that they.
I don't know if it was a ranking. I think there was just they were showing a lot of different photographs, but if it hadn't been put on the cover, I don't know if it would mean what it does today.
So you had told me you were going to bring this in. You sent me the link, and you put the YouTube video of this moment in the link, which is cool. So it really connects you as you're watching it. And
I love embedding videos when I can. Sometimes it's so fun to have a photo of a moment in a game, and then find the footage of that moment when Michael Jordan's making that play, and then show that play. Yeah, like
so. What was really cool is because I don't know if I've ever seen that moment. So it was awesome, like cool that he was going crazy, burning the guitar, the layer fluid, and all that. Then he started throwing out pieces. He smashed it. Then he started throwing out pieces to the crowd, and then the cameraman pans to the crowd. And the people in the first 10 rows, let's say, they're all like excited, like what's going on, this is crazy. And then they pan to the people a little further back and out on the side. And those people, they may say they were there, but their eyes were closed. I don't think they knew what they were seeing or witnessing. But it was just so funny. It was like a classic, what you would think of a Jimi Hendrix live show. Just, a lot of people out in outer space at the moment.
Yeah. And I don't think anybody who was there knew what it would represent ultimately.
Yeah.
Now this photo, pop culture is tough. You just don't know. It's not, with magazines or with cards, it's almost like currency. You know what everything's worth at different grades. But in pop culture, this is still a maturing market. Like this is sitting at around $1,500 right now. I thought, it seems to me it's a $10,000 photo. I mean, we'll see what happens. There's still a week and a half left of bidding.
Yeah, when you see baseball card photos going for $1 million, that at a couple of thousand seems like a no-brainer. And I just love that photograph was taken in the 60s. It sat in a studio for 20 years, and 20 years later, hey, let's put it on the cover of the most famous music entertainment publication there is, and now it's famous.
And Henry will tell you that for photo guys and for me, like the back is almost as interesting as the front. When you got stampings, you got notations, you got crop marks. I can really geek out about the back of a photo.
So 3 amazing pieces from Khyber. And we haven't shown Khyber this yet, but we wanted to because you specialize in crossover pieces. And we happened to just really walk into a crossover piece that matched with a Type 1 original photo.
Completely accidentally.
Completely accidentally. So what Chris Brigandy is holding is a 1926 Babe Ruth broadside barnstorming poster. After the season ended, or even during, they didn't make as much money as hopefully the Yankees pay Juan Soto. So Ruth had to travel around and do shows and make appearances. So we have this poster. We have not been able to find another one. It is insanely rare. Again, people think it's odd. Oh, how could a photograph be worth so much? Posters, the same thing. We have not been able to find something similar. The condition, it's just beautiful. You got the babe with his bat. So it was a home run, basically, contest with a bunch of kids at Lake Oscawana, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. And we just love the poster, love the look, had it framed up. And we obviously love vintage photography and Type 1s as well. And we love Ruth, and we love the fact that Babe Ruth was always great with kids. He was always going to hospitals to visit sick kids. He was always signing autographs for children. So we saw this Type 1 original photograph of Ruth just handing a young kid a trophy. Didn't think much of it until we decided to take a magnifying glass to the trophy, and we found out that it was from Lake Oscawana, and it was a trophy given to a kid who attended that exact event. So we just happened to walk into this crossover of the Type 1 photo and the poster.
Love it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to match, it doesn't have to be the image from the poster, but the story is there, the storytelling is there, they complement each other.
It's up, man.
Yeah, again, it was just like a happy accident, and now we love the poster so much more. Now we love the photo so much more. Just when you can have worlds collide like this, as a collector and just a passionate fan of this, it's.
You know, this brings to mind.
Go ahead.
This brings to mind something I was just writing in a description recently, which is that it used to be before the type system, collecting was different, and a lot of people would collect in genre instead of by type. They didn't often know the difference between types, or they just didn't. It didn't matter as much as it does today. So like Babe Ruth with kids, that's a genre. There were people who would collect Babe Ruth with kids photos, and they didn't care if it was type 3 or type 1. And I was just writing a Jackie Robinson stealing home photo, and I mentioned in the description there's this collector George Michael from the Sports Machine who collected all sliding photos. He was just obsessed. He wanted every sliding photo on the face of the planet, and so whenever I see one, I think of him.
Yeah. I think that's it for Khyber. Guys, give Khyber a round of applause. Thank you for coming, Khyber. Really appreciate it. And guys, let's do another 5-minute break. Grab some food, grab some drinks, and we'll be right back up here.
Let's take a picture real quick.
Yeah, let's do a picture.